one of the things that is really interesting is that my experiences, of course, are a lot different than Lauren's experiences. So when let me see if I can fix this without screwing anything up. Okay. Hold on a second. All right, well, okay. We'll just work. So Lauren's experiences are different than mine. Thank you, Sarah. And so when she and I stand, if we were standing right next to each other and some event happened in front of us, we would have a different reporting of that event because we have a different RAS filter. So I'll see some things and notice some things, and she'll notice some different ones. It's one of the reasons that eyewitness testimony in a court of law, if you know any attorneys, it's really not very useful. It's, even though we think eyewitness, wow, that's really great, lawyers are like, not so much. And the reason is because we all see different things. The reason we see different things is because our RAS is different. When I see an event, I have a program about it. If I say my program, I hope this isn't my program, but say my program is that every red-headed man is belligerent and drunk all the time. Okay. So if I have that in my RAS, as soon as I see a red-headed man, what am I going to think? Right. And is that really true? Of course not. So the RAS, as much as it does us a really great favor, it's kind of limited too. Now, how does it decide what's important? First of all, how often do we talk about something? Do we talk about something once every 6 months? Or is it something that we talk about every single day, multiple times a day? So if you were the RAS, which do you think is more important? Thing we talk about all the time, right? Yes?
Is talking the thing, or
many things?
Something you think about?
We'll get to that. She's asking if it's only talking, and it's not. It's a combination of things. I'm only going to highlight a few of them because the research into the RAS is huge. But it literally, just think the RAS process is every single thing in our environment. It's the job in the brain. It's a place in the brain that tracks every single thing in your environment. It sends it up to the conscious awareness. The conscious awareness says, is that what I want or not? It can send information back. Another aspect is how intensely do we desire something? Or how intensely do we dislike something? So the intensity of our experience, or like or dislike of something, is also a rating factor, so to speak, that the RAS uses. How often do we think about something? Do we think about our goals or the things we'd like to have in our lives? Do we think about those every day? Do we think about them once a year, maybe when we write our New Year's resolutions? So the RAS is going to look at what we're thinking about all the time and use that as well to determine what it's going to send to conscious thinking and what it's going to throw away. So where you are now, you could kind of think that where you are right now in this very moment in your life, in your business, in this room, is a product of all of the RAS. Because it's taken everything in your life, brought it to you in this place. Not only does it filter it, it also triggers our responses to an event, as well as the actions that we take. So it really, you can think of the RAS as really being in charge of why you're here, where you are right now in your life and in your business. Really cool info, you can reprogram the RAS. So just like you can change destinations in your GPS, you can change destinations in your RAS, so to speak, all the time. How you do it, we'll get to that in a little bit. But the cool thing is you're not stuck. So the RAS you have right now isn't going to rule your life forever unless you let it. So it triggers all your actions or thoughts. Your conscious mind can decide whether it likes those thoughts or whether it wants to do those actions. You have about half of a hundredth of a second that your brain starts to move your arm before your arm actually moves. About half of that time, you become consciously aware that your arm is going to move. And in that fraction of a time, you get to decide whether you're going to move your arm or not. It's not automatic unless you let it be automatic. If you don't take control over it, it will be automatic, and it'll be like autopilot. So I propose that the reason vision is so important is that you can make your vision, which we'll get to how to do that and how to create it in a moment, but you can make your vision be the new program that your RAS, your internal GPS, is going to run off of. It's going to use your vision as its new set of priorities, assuming you use the vision correctly. So that means the secretary has new rules, right? She's got a new job. She might not like the job she's got, so she's got a new one now. She has to sort according to different rules. And so now you see opportunities, you'll meet people, you'll end up in places, and you'll have ideas that were truly invisible to you before, because they were not part of your RAS. They existed there all the time, but you never saw them. It was as though they were invisible. Even people. There'll be people in your world that you're not aware of because they don't belong into what the RAS thinks that you want or thinks that you should be having. So voila. You have a new world literally being created in your mind right now and all the time. It's kind of cool, I think. So here's where I was kind of talking before. If you've ever noticed that when you decide something, all of a sudden these resources show up, books, people, those kinds of things that you never noticed before. And that's because the RAS is acting out on a new program. So how do you get a vision? How do you create it? You have to, create's maybe a little iffy of a word because you have a vision already. So you're not creating a vision. But you do get to take the vision that you have and you get to describe it and define it and make a new one if you don't like where you are now. The vision that your RAS is working on has brought you to where you are right now in your life. If you like that place and it's working for you, cool. And if you don't, you've got some opportunities. So one way that sometimes people have a hard time deciding what their vision is. So I tell people, start with what I call the opposites. So what is it that you dislike the most? And then, what would you like instead? What frustrates you or irritates you the most? What would you prefer instead? An example might be, people ask me sometimes for examples, so I use one that's like near and dear to my heart. If you have a really cluttered desk, which I sometimes do, and you really dislike that, just thinking about the cluttered desk is the thing that's opposite. So what's the opposite of the opposite? So I might say, if I'm writing down a vision around that, I could say something like, I'm really looking forward to, I'm really grateful that my desk is clear and that I have lots of work surface and it inspires me every time that I sit there. So the vision is really defining what your ideal is, how would you like it to look, how would you like it to be. Then there are your desires, things that you already know that you would like to have. Some things that you can think about are what's really important in your life. How would you like to spend your time? And how can you make a difference? For some of us, we like to serve and make a difference in the world. And so that might be a part of your vision and what matters to you. And one thing to keep in mind is that when you're creating this vision, it's really important, just like when you use a GPS in your car, you don't necessarily, when you're starting the trip, you don't necessarily know all the stops and turns and things that you're going to make. I mean, yes, if you know the way and you're just using it as a backup, you do. But if you're going to a new place, you might not know those things. And so you kind of make the assumption that you're going to have the resources for the trip when you start the trip. So make that same assumption here. Imagine that money and resources were overflowing. You had access to anything and everything that you could possibly want. What would you most like to do if that were the case? So here's the vision exercise which I assign to my clients, and some of them actually do. And I really recommend that we do this vision exercise. If you can do it monthly, it's awesome. If you can do it quarterly, it's really great. If you can do it twice a year, that's really good. If you can do it once a year, that's good. If you don't do it at all, work on it. So I've kind of written this description down, and this is where you might want to write a little bit about the notes to remind yourself. It's going to be about 30 minutes. You want a piece of paper, a pen, and a timer, and you're going to set the timer for 30 minutes. And then you're going to write at the top of the piece of paper today's date, so March 13th, and you're going to add 3 years, so it's going to be 2015. So you'd write March 13th, 2015, and now you have your creative imagination. You look at it and say, we've had access to all the resources, all the money, all the things that you could possibly have needed over the past 3 years, because it's 2015. And now I'm going to write a story about what my life is like. So I wake up in the morning and I decide I'm going to sit down and I'm going to journal a little bit about the things that I'm grateful for. So in 2015, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm writing down the things that I'm grateful for. So some of those things are people in your life. Who's in your life that you're really happy about? What's your family life like? Do you have a husband or not, kids, etc.? All those kinds of aspects of your life. And what is it that you feel when you're in that life? And this is something that's often forgotten. When we think analytically about goals and action items and all those things, we forget to think about what it feels like to have achieved those things. And the feeling is really, really important. And we'll get to that later because it helps intensify and make the vision more real. So talk about what it feels like. And what are some of the other things? How do you make a difference? We talked about that a moment ago. Maybe there's something, a cause that you really love that you get to work on now because your life is so perfect. Whose life or lives have you changed over the past 3 years? What kind of a difference have you made to some individuals? How is your life different? And all in a nutshell, I'm asking you to describe what you can imagine today is your ideal life. And imagine that as you write it, you're writing it as though it's already happened. So that's really important when you're thinking about your vision as well. And it's really important to set a timer and sit there for 30 minutes. Because at about 7 to 10 minutes, it differs for different people, you're going to run into this mental block. And it's known in brainstorming sessions in groups that at that time, ideas kind of dry up. What's also interesting is that after that 7 to 10 minute window, new ideas start flowing, and those ideas are the really cool ones. So the ones that came in the first 7 minutes are good ideas, and yet sometimes those that come after are really powerful. So make yourself a commitment to yourself, to no one else. Doesn't matter, I don't need to know if you do this or not, but make that commitment to yourself to take 30 minutes and actually do this exercise.